Hey friends, welcome and let me just check if everything is working all right before we jump into the live itself. Just give me a second, folks. Just give me a second. Let me see if everything. Welcome and yeah, things seem to be good. No issues whatsoever, and that's always good. So yeah, we are live, and let's wait for a few minutes while everyone joins in, and let's see. Yeah, we are sharp here at 7. So yeah, let's wait for a couple of more minutes as people join in. And I have a couple of announcements about the scholarship test, and of course, we'll also go through the questions in propositional and predicate logic. Hey, good evening, folks. Somebody's asking about solutions to the scholarship test. Okay, I think okay. Anyway, I'll talk to the team and get them shared with you. I'm okay. So Naveen or Subara or anybody, if you're present here, can you just respond to that and clarify about the solutions to the scholarship test itself? So somebody says, can we get a good rank if we start now for GATE 2020? Why not? So actually, a large percentage of people actually start now in early June. So, and that's one of the reasons why we conducted the test also in early June, because this is roughly like your summer vacation or middle of summer vacation. People would have taken some break and getting started. So June, July is certainly a very good time. My recommendation for anyone who is serious about GATE 2020 is to start preparing before September, or at least before October. Okay, if you're already strong with some basics, again, even if you start in October, you'll have to put in many more hours per day. So ideally, the earlier the better. Like we have some students who started in February itself, right after the GATE exam. They will always have an advantage because they have more time to prepare, and they have more opportunities to practice. But it's okay. Even now is a very good time. But whether you decide to take GATE or not, you should make the decision before. Worst case is September end. You should try and do it before that, and the earlier the better. Right now is a very good time. This is one of the peak times when students actually start preparing for GATE seriously. So there is no worry about it, right? Somebody is asking how important is mathematics for GATE. Very important. Many people think, again, I've seen this comment multiple times, that people think mathematics is not a core subject, which is incorrect. Actually, mathematics, both engineering and discrete mathematics, is at least 15 marks typically in GATE for computer science, which is a ton of marks, right? Similarly, and if you prepare for mathematics, your aptitude will also be very easy to crack. Aptitude in English is 15 marks. So if you're strong in mathematics, you can easily score like 20 to 23 marks very easily. And that's almost the qualifying marks, right? If you think about it. So 20 to 23 marks is a very good score, because English may be some 6-7 marks. So if you're good at math, just mathematics, engineering mathematics, discrete mathematics, and if you're good at both of them, you can easily crack aptitude also. So mathematics is probably the most scoring subject that many people don't focus on. That's why we are spending so much time on mathematics right now. Okay. I think yeah. Yeah, so somebody's asking about scholarship test. We are not planning for any scholarship tests this year. We thought June is a good time because it's also vacation time. People have finished exams. That's why we thought June is a good time for scholarship tests. Certainly, we'll also, again, we have not planned for next year's scholarship test right now, so I don't want to comment on it right away. Somebody's asking about C programming. So I'll take a few questions before I dive into. So let's spend some time, right? Because it's been a while that we chatted. So I'll try and answer as many questions as possible, and then I'll go into the questions. Let's do that. So okay. So what books to follow? Very good question. So for logic itself, I really like this book by Kenneth Rosen. I think, where is this book? This book is right here with me, actually. I was actually writing notes. It is this. Okay, I think you're seeing the mirror image. This is called Discrete Mathematics and Applications with Combinatorics and Graph Theory by Kenneth Rosen. This is a very good book. I really liked the book, primarily because of the examples in the book. Again, I've based a lot of the topics in discrete mathematics on this book. But the problem is this book does not have group theory, does not have lattices and some topics. So that's one of the lacking points of this book. But otherwise, this book is very good for other topics in discrete mathematics, especially logic, right? They have tons of examples, tons of practice problems. I really liked it. Actually, it's right here because I was writing some notes for other topics also based on this. So that's a very good book. So somebody says, somebody's asking till what time you should complete the syllabus. See, to be honest with you, the earlier the better. Okay, but in the worst case, even in the worst case, you should finish your syllabus. Ideally in the worst case, you should finish your syllabus before middle of December. All the subjects you should be done with it before December 15th. If you're done with it, then you have 2 more months to revise everything and to practice like crazy. The earlier, so if you can finish the whole syllabus by September 1st, that's great, because you get more time to practice, more revisions and things like that. In the worst case, you should try and finish your whole syllabus by the 15th of December, because then you would have 1.5 to 2 months to revise everything, like 45 to 60 days, depending on your exact examination date, so as to revise all the subjects and to practice and to take mock tests. So December 15th should be your closing date where you've finished all the subjects at least once. That's the ideal case scenario. That's what I would strongly recommend, but earlier the better. Someone says how many hours you need to put in on a day-to-day basis. What we are asking, again, this depends on person to person. Okay, we are asking our students currently for at applied gate course to put in at least 3 hours a day, at least, because that's roughly the amount of content we give. Again, it also depends on the students. If you already know the computer science fundamentals, because you learn these subjects in your second year, third year of BTech, or fourth, or sometimes in your fourth year of BTech, because you've already studied them. If you've studied them well during undergrad days, then you can finish this content very fast. All you need is to practice questions. But if you have not gone through your content very well during your undergraduate years, or the earlier years in your undergraduate curriculum, then you might need more time. But on an average, for an average student, I think 3 hours a day is a good starting point if you're starting from now. Again, if you start later, it will become 4 hours, even 6 hours, right? As you, again, depends. See, at the end of the day, you should have finished all of the course contents, all of the subjects, tons of practice problems. You should try and solve the last 20, 30 years of GATE question papers thoroughly. So that's a type of, and revise all the content, make notes. That takes time. My recommendation is at least, I mean, for an average student, it will be 3 hours a day, probably slightly more over weekends if you have time. Of course, if you have semester exams, or if you're a working professional and you have some deliverables at your company, you might squeeze in extra time or less time based on your routine then. But in general, for an average student, I would recommend 3 hours a day. Okay, where are we? Okay. Practice questions or study theory. So this is a logic question here. If you don't know theory, you can't solve problems. Number one. Okay, if you don't understand the theoretical, if you don't know how mud sort works, if you don't know how to compute mud sort's time complexity, how will you solve problems related to mud sort? So you have to know theory. But theory alone will not get you a GATE rank. See, if you know all the theory in the world, but if you have not practiced problems, or in other words, if you are not good at problem solving, right, you cannot simply crack GATE. So theory and practice both are mandatory if you want to get a good GATE rank. You can't skip any of them. Okay. Again, see, the theory for GATE syllabus, if you look at GATE syllabus, right, for many subjects, the theory is not fully exhaustive. Okay. The theory is also fairly limited. For example, you take subjects like compiler design, for example. You don't have all the aspects of compiler design as part of your syllabus for GATE. You have only some topics, right? And if you focus just on those topics, you're good. Similarly, in discrete mathematics, you don't have groups, fields, all these topics, which some universities have as part of their course curriculum, right? So the course structure and also the course curriculum for each subject in GATE is also not fully exhaustive. So you have to learn theory. Without that, you can't solve problems. And you also have to solve problems, because without that, you can't actually solve problems in GATE, because in GATE, you're not going to be asked theoretical questions, right? I mean, 90% of the times. So somebody is asking, do you recommend dropping a year? That's a hard choice. My suggestion for you would be, instead of dropping a year, if you have a job opportunity somewhere, this is my personal recommendation. My recommendation for you would be to join the job, to take up the job that you have, the offer that you have, and continue your preparation for GATE. I mentioned this multiple times in previous live sessions also. I've had classmates at Indian Institute of Science who are like single-digit rankers or early double-digit rankers who are working professionals who cracked GATE. So because look at this, in case, you always have to prepare for the worst case, right? In case you don't crack GATE the next year, at least you have 1 year worth of experience, right? So my suggestion is, instead of dropping a year, go join a job if you already have a job opportunity, and parallelly prepare for GATE, which is very, very doable. We have tons of students who are working professionals who are putting in effort either early in the morning or late at the night or during the weekends. I've seen tons of working professionals who are doing phenomenally well in our course. So there is nothing which stops you from that. Okay. So any standard textbook for linear algebra, I think I mentioned this earlier also. For linear algebra, there is this book by Gilbert Strang. Okay, there is also a course at MIT by Gilbert Strang himself, which is a very, very good, Gilbert Strang is one of the best professors that I know of for linear algebra. His book is also very good, but the only problem here is his book is a very exhaustive linear algebra book. Okay, the problem, again, this is a problem with many GATE subjects, right? The GATE syllabus is not everything that is there in a linear algebra course. If you look at, for example, if you look at Gilbert Strang's book, right, or even his course, you would encounter things like singular value decomposition, principal component analysis, all of these concepts in linear algebra course itself. I think he also covers some Fourier transforms in his linear algebra course, which we don't need for GATE. So his book is a superset of what you need for GATE. Right? But if you want to pick up a textbook and read, Gilbert Strang's book is one of the best books that I know of. It also, again, there is a small problem with Gilbert Strang's book. It's actually fair, it's very well written, but I wish there was more geometric intuition in his book. He provides it, but not explicitly. It's there implicitly somewhere in terms of geometric intuition. Because the way I look at linear algebra is from a pure geometry perspective. So that's what I would recommend. So somebody says how to prepare and make notes from standard textbooks. Again, note preparation is something that is very, 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 very subjective. The way I make notes and the way you make notes is going to be very different. Okay. But my suggestion is this: try and make a list of, again, your notes cannot be like a textbook. Then it's no more notes, right? At the same time, you can't skip away the important things. Then it doesn't contain all the information that you need. My suggestion here is make your notes crisp. By which what I mean here is write down all the key observations, write down all the key concepts, try and draw as many diagrams as you can, because diagrams are easier to remember and to revise. Write down all the important results. Probably you can skip some of the proofs, but if you can write the proof in two sentences or 3 sentences, write it down, right? So that way you can, for example, take some subject like linear algebra, right? You can actually write the notes for linear algebra in less than 10 pages, 10 A4 size pages. You can write the whole linear algebra notes. So why is that useful? Because I can revise this 10 pages in under 1.5 hours. Okay, I have all the important results of linear algebra. I have all the important aspects of linear algebra covered in this 10 pages. Literally in 10 pages, I can write the whole notes. Actually, I think I've written that. When I was preparing notes for my own notes for recording videos, I think I wrote the whole notes for linear algebra in under 10 pages. Okay, so your notes has to have all the important results, and you should know how to prove the important results, or if you can write the proofs in 2 or 3 lines on the side, do write it. But again, my strategy is to draw lots of diagrams, because diagrams help me revise concepts very fast, because I can just look at a diagram and say, oh, okay, this is what it is. This is what it is. Because we are visual creatures. We remember visual things much better than equations. So that's what I tend to typically do. Again, every person has a different strategy. This is my strategy that has worked well for me over the last couple of decades. Okay. So somebody says, okay, very good question. So Vineet has a very good question. He says, how to complete some subjects like computer networks, operating systems, DLD, and computer organization, but I'm not confident in those subjects. Okay, so a very important point here is, for me, again, I'll tell you a personal story. When I was preparing for GATE myself, right, this is almost 12 years back, I didn't prepare for computer networks very well the first time around when I was taking my GATE exam. So I was underconfident. The next time when I prepared for GATE, so if you have gone through the whole theory, but if you're not confident, the best way to gain confidence is to solve previous year questions. Because the moment you start solving previous year questions, you're going to be very, very confident that you can actually solve questions that will come this year. The best way to build confidence for GATE is to solve previous year question papers and the practice questions that we have. The moment you start solving these questions, that's a great feedback loop. For example, you answered a question. Let's assume it's a GATE question from the last 5 years. That feedback loop that you have answered it correctly is humongously encouraging to you. You have actually solved a GATE question, which means you have the knowledge, you have the skills to actually start solving GATE questions. So that keeps building up. That keeps building up. Practice is a very quick feedback loop to give you encouragement on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. Right? Again, I just wanted to, since I've taken some questions, let me also mention a few updates and few. Let me just summarize the scholarship test itself. We had a 2,300. I have the number here. 2,314 students who have successfully completed and submitted the answers for the scholarship test. There are some people who started the test but didn't complete. We're not counting them in. So 2,314 students have submitted the answers for the scholarship test, of which the very interesting thing is, in the top 100, 22 of the students are our existing students. Obviously, they would have some advantage, right? And it's also fair for them to have an advantage because they've started earlier. They've started preparing for GATE earlier, and hence they have an advantage. So 22 of the top 100 are our existing students. And in the 101 to 200, I think 29 students are our existing students. For all of them, I think we have already sent out an email about the refund process. Please follow that process. Please send us your bank account credentials. We'll refund the amount as we promised. And to all the students who are not our existing students, welcome on board. We're extremely happy to have you on board. And thanks to all the 2,314 students and some more students who participated in the test, but who could not finish because they got lost or whatever reason. So to all these 2,000 odd students, thanks a lot for making this scholarship test a big success for us. Because when we started this test, we were not sure how many students would take up this test. But the feedback that we got, both in terms of the quality of questions that we asked, and more importantly, about the quality of our content, we got a lot of encouragement saying, this is one of the best linear algebra content I've seen, or this is what some of the best content I've seen, or I've actually learned some basic sorting algorithms from here. And my intuition and understanding of sorting algorithms and linear algebra have improved dramatically after this. Whether I am successful in the scholarship test or not, there is a great takeaway for me. And that sort of appreciation and feedback motivates us like crazy to keep pushing out great content, to keep working and striving to help our students reach greater heights. Having said that, we also got some very valuable feedback on how to improve. Again, that's very, very important for us. It's only foolish if we think that we know everything. It's the students know a lot more than us, right? And we're constantly learning from this feedback that the students are providing us. Thanks to all the students who have provided extremely valuable encouragement and feedback to us, right? And thanks to everybody who has participated in these tests. And I think you would get the coupon codes maybe today or tomorrow, worst case. Just work with our team. If you're an existing student, you would get refund proportionately. Or if you're a new student, welcome on board. And since we are anyway finishing up propositional predicate logic now, the next topic that we will start in a couple of days, actually, I'll start pushing out the content from tomorrow early morning. So the next topics that we will work on is counting, the combinatorics concepts, recurrence relations, generating functions, then some probability concepts, and then graph theory. With that, we'll finish discrete mathematics and we'll go to other subjects, right? So since we have given, again, some of our existing students have requested us to give them a little break because they were preparing for the scholarship test, and we respected that. So this week, we will not give you any break. Let's rush through it. Of course, I'm not saying let's skip something. No, I want you guys to put more effort. We'll also put in more effort from our side. Let's finish discrete mathematics as soon as we can, but of course, thoroughly. No shortcuts. We'll do it thoroughly. Okay. Sounds good, folks. With that, I think I've spent almost 20 minutes. I think we should get into the questions. I'll try and solve as many questions as I can. Okay. So let me start sharing the screen here. Okay, I think I have the screen up. Okay, I think everybody can see the screen now. Let me just check. Okay, yeah. Okay, this looks good. Okay, let's get started now. So this is one of the first questions. Again, in our propositional predicate logic, or the whole subject of logic itself, some questions are fairly simple. Some questions are tricky, not very hard, but tricky, but very doable. Let's look at this first question, right? So consider the following statements. Those who like paintings like flowers. Those who like running like music. Those who do not like music do not like flowers. So it says if all of the above statements are true, then consider the following statements. Okay, there are 5 statements, and it says which of the following is true. A lengthy question, but a doable one. Okay, so let me start saying this as, so let's say I have P of X, which means X likes paintings. Okay, let me have F of X. Okay, paintings, right? X likes paintings. X likes flowers, F of X, right? Let me have, I also have music here, right? So M of X basically means X likes music. Now, what is this first statement? Let's translate it into logic, right? So those who like paintings like flowers. So if X likes paintings, so the other way of writing it is, if X likes paintings, then X likes flowers, right? Those who like paintings like flowers. If X likes paintings, X also likes flowers. Okay. The second statement is those who like running like music. Sorry, those who like running like music. Yes. Okay. So if X likes running, then X likes music. That's what this is. Let's look at the third one. The third one is those who do not like music do not like flowers. So those who do not like music, so not, if X does not like music, then X does not like flowers. Okay, so these are the 3 statements that I'm given. Now I'm given these 5 statements. Let's actually read this. Those who like running like flowers. Okay, those who like paintings like music. Okay, so those who like flowers do not like running. Those who like running do not like paintings. Those who like paintings like running. Okay, let's actually work with these 3. Okay, so let's see which of them is true. So I have 4 and 5, 2 and 3, 1 and 4, and 2 only. Okay, so let's actually work this out, right? So let's look at the first one. Okay, let me erase this. This is a slightly lengthy question, but it's a straightforward question. Okay, so imagine if these 3 are true, then can I conclude that those who like running like flowers, right? So if X likes running, X likes flowers. Can I conclude this? See, from this, okay, let's also write a statement here. From this statement is equivalent to this statement is equivalent to, if somebody likes flowers, they like music. Again, you can verify this. So if I translate this, right, this is not of mx or not of fx, right? So this is equivalent to this. Again, that's very simple. Imagine I have not m implies not f. Okay, what does this mean? This means not of not m or not f, right? Now, what is this? This is equivalent to m or not f. What is this? This is nothing but f implies m, right? Very simple. So if you have not mx implies not fx, this is equivalent to fx implies mx. Both of them are equivalent. So now what does it say? It says Rx implies Mx. Look at this. This can't be true, right? Rx implies Mx. Mx doesn't imply Fx. Fx implies Mx. So this can't be true. Okay. See, if this was Fx implies Rx, then that's true. If R implies M, right? If M implies F, then this would have been true. But what we have is F implies M, right? So this is not true. What is the second statement? Those who like paintings like music. So if X likes painting, X also likes music. Is that true? Look at this. I have, if P, then P implies F, right? F implies M. Okay, so this is my first statement. This is my second statement, and this is my third statement. What does it say? P implies F. Now F implies M, which means P implies M. So this statement is true. So 2 is true. Okay, so either this is the right option, or this is the right option. This can't be the right option, and this can't be the right option. Now let's check if 3 is the right option. Then we can rule out this also. If 3 is right, if 3 is correct, this is the answer. If 3 is false, then D is the right option. We're just ruling out options. So those who like flowers do not like running. So if X likes flowers, then if X likes those who like flowers, okay? So if X likes flowers, X does not like running. Can I make this conclusion? Look at this. So F, see, if F implies M, but I don't, so what I can write this as, look at this, I can write this as not of M implies not of R. Can I write it like this? Yes, I can write it like this. So R implies M is same as not M implies not R. So what do I have? See, I have F implies M, okay? But I have not M implies R, which means F does not imply not R. Look at this. You got the logic, I hope, right? So let's write this down. What do I have? I have F implies M. I'm just skipping the X part here, just for brevity. Okay, and I have not M implies not R. From both of them, I can't say. From both of them, I can't conclude. I can't conclude that F implies not R. Because I have M here, I have not M here. If this was also M, then I could have said F implies M implies not R. So I can say F implies not R. But I can't do this. So 3 is also incorrect. So the right option here is C. Again, this is a lengthy question, but a very simple question. Simple logic question. Okay, very simple question, but it's a lengthy one. That's all there is. Okay, so now let's go to the next question now. Again, this is a 2-mark question, so it's okay to be lengthy. Okay, so now let's go to the second question. So what does it say? The second question says, okay, last year, okay, statement is, okay, let me change. Last year, the only books I read were adventure books. Okay, last year, the only books I read were adventure books. The logical representation of the above statement here is, what is A? If I read an adventure story, so if it's an adventure story, right? If it's an adventure story, then it is the book that I read last year. So here you're assuming that you have read every adventure story, which is not true, right? The only books I read were adventure stories, right? So look at this, look at option B. So option A is not the right option. What is option B? The book that I read last year. If it's a book that I read last year, then it's an adventure story. Yes, this makes sense. Because what is the statement saying? The only books that I read were adventure stories, which means I only read adventure stories, right, last year, which is equivalent to saying, if I read the book last year, then it is an adventure story, because I read no other stories apart from adventure stories last year. So B here is the right option, right? Very simple. Again, you have to be careful when you do this translation of if then, right? Otherwise, this is a straightforward. That's why it's a 1-mark question. It literally, if you read this question, it will take you 30 seconds to answer. Very simple, very straightforward question. If you have gone through the course videos, this should be like trivial and straightforward. Okay. Okay. So now let's go to the third question. Okay. So what is this third question now? The third question says, which of the following formulae is the formalization of the sentence? What is the sentence here? There is a computer which is not used by any student. Okay. So let's see. Okay. Let's see A first. Okay. There exists X such that X is a computer, and there exists Y such that there exists Y. Look at this. So for all Y, right? So how should this look like? If you think about it, right? If I were to translate this myself without any of these options, right? There is a computer, which means there exists X such that X is a computer. Okay. So there exists a computer, right? Which is not used by any student. So X is a computer, and if Y is a student, then Y, if Y is a student, then Y has not used. See, there is a computer which is not used by any student, right? So if Y is a student, so for all X, there exists a computer called X such that for all students, that's what this says, right? For all students, this is uses, right? It has not been used. For all students, X has not been used by any Y. Okay, so this is the right way of writing it. And which of these is the right way? Look at this again. Here is a question which, again, you have, look at this, for all and. This is a common mistake that we discussed in the course videos. Okay, many people make this mistake of for all and. where what you should actually write is for all and implies. Look at this. For all and implies is the right way of writing it. So I think option C is exactly what we wrote here. Right? There exists X, computer of X, and for all Y. If Y is a student, then it uses this. Yes, option C is the right option here. And you could have eliminated other options also, because typically, I'm not saying it's always incorrect, as we discussed in the course videos. It's a very common mistake wherein instead of writing for all with implies, people write for all with and. It's a very, very common mistake. Similarly, many people, instead of writing there exists with and, a common mistake is people use there exists with implies. It's also a very common mistake, right? So when you have these options, right, the easiest way, this is how I solve this problem. I first write it into my own terms, right? And I see if this already exists, or if there is one of these options which is equivalent to this option. Okay, so option C is the most appropriate option here. Again, we have seen problems like these in the course videos. So it's not rocket science to be able to translate this. I think we have seen tens of examples like this in the course videos, right? Again, this we have to be careful. For all and implies oftentimes gets confused with for all and. There exists and often gets confused with there exists and implies. Okay, so if you know that reasoning of very common mistakes that we discussed in the course videos, this should be straightforward for you. Okay, and that's why it's a 1 mark question. Okay, so let's go to the fourth one now. Okay, so let's go through the fourth one. Okay, so it says consider the following statements. Okay, I have this rules of infer. So this is basically if these three are true, I'm inferring this. This is my second option. What does it say? It says which of the following is true? 1 is true, 2 is true, both are true, both are false. Let's see. Okay, this looks daunting at the very first. The moment you see it, it looks like crazy. But let's break this down. Okay, so let's break it down step by step. Okay, so I want to get it into this form, right? Let's see what is this. Okay, let's rewrite this, right? So it says if this is true, and this is true, can I conclude that this is also true? So let's see what is this. See, if I apply De Morgan's law here, I'll get R or Q and not S. This is what I'll get, right? See, if I apply De Morgan's law, this is what I'll get, because I have not S here, I have not S here. I'm applying De Morgan's law. Now, if this is true, what does that mean? It means both this is true and this is true, right? That's what it means, right? For this whole thing to be true, this has to be true and this has to be true. If this is true, because of this statement, this whole thing is also true. Look at the way I'm going in. Okay, if this is true, again, we have shown this in the course videos, right? So if this is true, this whole thing also has to be true, right? This whole thing has to be true. Now let's go to this. Okay, so I have P and R implies U is also true. Now if okay, so let's see this. Okay, so now what do I have here? I have this. Okay, so I also have U implies this, right? I somehow have to get P and Q in the same thing. Okay, since not of S is true, look at this. Since not of S is true, I can say not of S or T is also true. See, if not of S is true, not of S or anything is also true. So if this is true, then I can write this as not of S and not T is also true, because they both are equivalent. Look at this, right? If this is true, see, if not of S is true, not of S or this also will be true, right? If this is true, again, I'm just applying De Morgan's law here. If this is true, this is equivalent to this, which means this is also true. If this is true, look at this. If this is true, now comes the fun part, right? If this is true, then what is this? This statement is equivalent to, not of S and not T implies not U. This statement is equivalent to this statement. And if this is true, look at this. If this is true, for this whole statement to be true, not U also is true, right? Not U is true. So what do we got here? We got not U as true. Okay, again, why am I playing with not U here? Because I have P here. I want to somehow get to this P. Okay, so I'm trying to get to this P through U. Okay, now what do I have? I have P and R. So what is, if this is true? Okay, let's play with this. If that is true, what does it mean? Not of P and R or U. Okay, we know that not of U is true, which means U is false. U is false, right? So if U is false, this has to be true, right? If this is true, for this whole thing to be true, this has to be true. If this is true, what does that mean? Okay, if that is true, that is nothing but not P or not R is true. This is equivalent to this, right? And what is this now? This is nothing but P, P implies not R. Right? This implies P implies not R. Okay, see, I'm trying to get into P implies Q form now. Okay, so P implies not R. Okay, so now this is true. Okay, now this is true. Now, where is my Q here? My Q is here. See, this has to be true and this also has to be true. Right? This also has to be true now. Somehow I have to get to this. So, okay, P implies not R is true, right? Now I have this R. See, because this whole thing is true, this has to be true and this has to be true. Again, I'm playing with this now because I want to get to P implies Q. Look at this. I have P implies not R and I have R or Q, right? So can I write R or Q? How can I write this as an implication? Let's say, how can I write this as an implication? Can I write it as not R implies Q? This is not of not R, which is R or Q. Yes. So this is equivalent to this. Okay. Now what do I have? P implies not R and not R implies Q. Okay. If both of them are true, can I conclude from both of them? I can conclude that P implies Q. Yes. So this is true. Again, it took me a lot of steps. Again, while doing all of these steps, what I'm looking for is, can I somehow connect P, which is here? Look at this. While doing this whole thing, the biggest thought process back in my head, how to solve this problem, is P is here and Q is here. I somehow have to connect both of them. To connect both of them, my P is connected to U. Look at this. My P is connected to U. Okay. Now, I've removed my not S. My S and U are connected here. So that's why I'm trying to jump around. I'm trying to jump around all these options to see if I can get something like this. P implies not R, which is what I got with a bunch of manipulations. And from this first part, I got not R implies Q. So from both of them, I can conclude that P implies Q, right? Again, this is a slightly tricky case, which requires a lot of patience and a lot of manipulations. Okay, so this is easy. So again, this part is a tricky and slightly harder part, but you can actually solve it. It's not rocket science. The second part, we have actually seen this, right? In course videos, I've actually shown that this is a tautology. Again, I can prove this again. What does it say? For all x, P of x, which means P1 is true and P2 is true and so on and so forth, everything is true. Again, if you recall the notation that we used in the course videos, P1 is nothing but Px1, P2 is nothing but Px2, right? Or for all x, Q of x, which means Q1 or Q2, sorry, Q1 and Q2 and Q3, so on and so forth. This implies, does this imply P1 or Q1 and P2 or Q2, so on and so forth, right? Obviously, it does imply, right? Because look at this. If this is true, look at this. If this is true, then we have to prove that this is true, right? That's what implies basically means. For this to be true, right? For this to be true, this has to be true or this has to be true. Let's assume this is true. If this is true, then each of the P1s are true. If each of the P1s are true, then each of these is true and the AND of all truths is true. Very good. On the other hand, imagine if this is false and this is true. Then each of these Q1s is true, which means each of these expressions is true and the AND of all expressions is true. So we've actually proven this in the course videos also. This is actually a tautology, but the other way is not a tautology. Okay, the other way, you can't, if you go backwards like this, it's not a tautology. Okay, we have also proven that in the course videos, right? So what is the answer here? This is true and this is true. So both are true. C is the right option here. Again, this question is a 2-mark question and it's slightly challenging. Again, this part is straightforward. This is a slightly tricky case because your P and R are connected through many other variables like R, like S, U, R, etc. Even T in this case, right? So there are too many variables here making this cumbersome. But if you're careful and if you focus, you can actually derive that P implies Q, right? So the option, both the options are true here. This is a slightly on the harder side. I won't say harder. This is tricky. This is not hard. Okay, so now let's go to the next question. What is the logical translation of the following statement? None of my friends are perfect. So none. First, I have none. Okay, so here there is not. So let's actually see this. Okay, again, I'm not saying this is the right answer, but let's go through this. none of my friends, so none, no, okay, no, which makes it, which I'm putting the no here. All of my friends are perfect. Sorry, none of my friends are perfect. So not of makes sense. Not of, okay. There exists X such that f of X is a friend of mine and X is perfect. Okay. What does it mean? It means there does not exist any X such that X is both a friend and he is perfect. This actually D is the right option here. By just looking at it, I can say that. But let's see what does the first one say. Let's look at what does the first one say. The first one says there exists somebody who is both a friend, right? Who is my friend and who is not perfect. That's not what it's saying. It's saying none of my friends are perfect. Here, what is this saying? This is saying there exists a person who is my friend and who is not perfect. No, all of my friends, none of my friends are perfect. Or in other words, all of my friends are imperfect. Okay, so this statement is not true. So there exists X. Okay, so there exists X such that X is not a friend of mine and not perfect. No, this doesn't bind in. So what? So okay, so this says there exist some people who are not my friends and who are perfect. I don't care about this. This is not same as none of my friends are perfect. What does this say? This says there exist some people who are not my friends and who are not perfect. I don't care about this. What does this say? This says there does not exist any person who is both my friend and who is perfect. This is the most appropriate translation. Again, if you want to think about it, just rewatch this video, think about it carefully. Again, some of these are tricky to get the very first time. It's only through practice that you become good at this. Okay. So by just looking at it, because I've practiced enough while I was teaching this course, that I could just literally look at this and say, oh, this looks most promising, right? So this is an easy question actually, because that's why it's a 1 mark question, right? It's a straightforward question. It's a simple question, but you have to be careful. That's all there is. Okay. So now let's go to the 6th question. Which of the following is the most appropriate logical formula to represent the statement gold and silver ornaments are precious? Hey, this is very similar to the example that we have seen in the course. We have seen an example in the course. I think the example was, I forgot what it was. Some precious metals are precious. There's some 2 things. I think rubies and diamonds are precious or something like that. Some example like that in the course videos, right? We have seen that. This is very simple. If you have gone through the course videos, this is straightforward to answer. This is, okay, so G of X is gold ornament, S of X is silver ornament, P is precious. So the answer here is, let's see, for all X, if it's precious, no. For all X, if G of X and S of X, no. Something can't be both gold and silver, right? Again, this is saying it's gold and silver, no. D is the most appropriate answer, right? For all X, if X is gold or X is silver, then X is precious, which is another way of saying all gold and silver ornaments are precious. So D is the most appropriate choice. And we've discussed a very similar example, I think with the different names of, I think we use rubies and diamonds or something like that in the course videos, right? This is a straightforward example. Very simple question, hence 1 mark question. Again, the moment you see X is both gold and silver, you can avoid this. X is both gold and silver. Obviously not. X cannot be both gold and silver, right? Here, X is both gold and silver. So you can immediately, by looking at this logical and here, you can simply weed out these options and be left with only option D. Very simple, straightforward question here. So now let's go to the 7th question. Okay, so in the 7th question, what do we have now? Suppose the predicate, okay, so this is a tricky one. We have seen a variation of this in the course videos also. Okay, let's see. Actually, this is not hard. It's slightly, you have to be careful. Okay, so let's see. Suppose the predicate f, x, y, t is used to represent the statement that person X can fool person Y at time t. I think we have seen the option where we had X can fool Y or something like that. We have seen an example very similar to this fooling example in the course video. It's not exactly this. This is more intricate than that. Which one of the following statements expresses best the meaning of this formula? Look at this. What is this? So this is for all. Okay. Okay. Let's first read these options. Everyone can fool some person at some point. No one can fool everyone. Everyone cannot fool some person at some. Cannot fool some person all the time. No one can fool some person all the time. See, we have fool more often than cannot fool, right? So here what we have is not fool is what we have. So let's translate this not fool to fool first. Okay, because most of the options we have are in the form of fool. Not fool is there only here. Okay, so let's translate this. If I translate this, can I write this as for all x? Again, there are multiple ways of translating this. Can I write this as for all x, not of, okay, I'm trying to bring this not here, right? Not of for all y, for all t, right? F of x, y, t. Okay, I'm only jumping this not 2 steps here. I'm only jumping it here. I'm not bringing it before this. Now, if you look at this, what is this? Again, there are multiple ways of translating this into logic. We'll see which of them fit, which of them don't fit. What does this read as? It says for all x, okay, for all x, okay, there exists for all x and for all y and at all times. Okay, so f cannot. So okay, so let's read this. Okay, so let's actually go through each of these options. So it says for all x, this is no, right? So this is no, not, no or not, whatever you want to call it as. Everyone, all the time. So this is basically everyone. So every person, this is every y. This is every y. This is at all time. At all time, right? So this says for all x, for all x. So for all persons, there exists a not. So for all x, not for every y at all time fx yt. Okay. So this seems very much like, so when I read this, right, everyone can fool some person at some time. So this for me, if I translate this English in my own sentence, this would be for all x, for every person, right, at every time, at all times, to every people you can't fool, x cannot fool. See, what does it say? It says x cannot fool every other person at every time. That's what this means, right? So this means x cannot, because there is not here, x cannot fool. Okay, x cannot fool every y at every time. That's what this is. This is equivalent to this. Or if I try to read this, for all x, for every person x, there exists some y and at some time, there exists some other person y and at some time, x cannot fool y at that time. Right? So that's what this statement is. Now, if you look at B, I think B comes closest to this. Because what does B read as? No one can fool everyone all the time. Look at this. No single person can fool everyone all the time. This is equivalent to saying for all x, right, there exists some y and at some time that x cannot fool that person. So for every person, see, for everyone, cannot fool everyone all the time. So no person, look at this. If there is x here, x cannot fool everyone all the time. This is another way of reading this. Okay, again, both these are the same equivalents. Now they both, if I read each of these 4 statements, B seems to be the most relevant, because it says no person can fool everyone all the time. Okay, which is equivalent to saying for every person at every, for every x, right, for every y at all times, you can't fool that person, right? Or in other words, for every x, actually you don't even have to translate into this, you can actually work off this itself. What does this say? This says that for every x, there exists another person y at some time t that x can't fool them, which means that no one can fool everyone all the time, right? So I hope you're convinced with this. Again, this is a tricky thing, because it's very, very easy to fall into the trap and say either A, C, or D is the correct option. Okay, see, what does A say? Let's take A, right? Everyone can fool some person at some time. No, this one doesn't say that. This one says for every person x, there is some other person y at some time t that x can't fool them, which is not same as A, right? So B is the most appropriate option here. Again, this is tricky from the English perspective, but you have to be careful for problems like these, right? Okay, so let's go to the 8th question now. That's a tricky one, especially if you're not an especially for non-native English speakers, and if you're not comfortable with English, that can be a tricky question. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, consider the following statement. A statement that is either true or false is called a proposition. Okay, this statement that is either true or false. No, what is a proposition? We define proposition as a statement that is either true or false, but not both. But not both is missing here. A statement has to be either true or false, but not both. That's what is a proposition. So this statement is not correct because but not both is missing. Now let's look at this. For all x, p of x is true. If for all x, p of x is true, then there exists x, at least one x such that p of x is true. Now, is this always true? If you look at it like this, here I'm not defining what x is. See, we have seen that this implies this, but if and only if, this is only true if x belongs to a non-empty set. Only if x belongs to a non-empty set. Imagine if I said x equals to the set of primes, right? X belongs to the set of primes that are less than 0. Okay, let's assume I said x belongs to set of primes that are less than 0. There are no primes that are less than 0, right? So this x belongs to a empty set. If x belongs to an empty set, look at this. If x belongs to an empty set, you cannot have there exists x p of x, right? So this statement is true if and only if the domain of x, this is an important clause, the domain of x is non-empty. If the domain of x is non-empty, then this clause is true. Otherwise, this clause is not true. Since this statement, if and only if the domain of x is non-empty, is not mentioned, this is also false. So both of them are false. This is a very, very tricky case. I almost fell for this, to be honest. When I was solving these questions prior to this live session, I got the first one very easily. For the second one, I almost fell for it. Okay, because then I had to say, okay, so there has to be something tricky here. Why are they giving such a trivial question? Right? This is something that everybody knows. There is something tricky here because the first part also was tricky if you think about it. The first part also, but not both, is missing, which means they're trying to pose a tricky question here. Then I said, what if, because they're not defined what is the domain of x here. So if I define a domain of x which is an empty set, then this statement doesn't hold. Right? Only when the set is non-empty, if and only if the domain of x is non-empty, then this statement is true. But that part is missing and hence this statement is incorrect. So both of them are false. So D is the right option here. Right? This was a tricky one. I almost fell for it, to be honest. So it's a very tricky, it's a good question. It tests your knowledge of boundary cases. Okay, so let's see. Which of the following implications are tautologies? Okay, so let's go one by one. If I drink milk, okay, let's assume I drink milk. If I drink milk, okay, X drinks milk. I am healthy, then X is healthy. Or, okay, or if I am healthy, I do maths. If I am healthy, then I do maths. Okay, milk and maths. Okay, so let me just write it this way. So instead of using this X, just let me write it as M implies H or H implies MA. Now, is this a tautology? Let's see. Not M or H or not H or MA. Look at this. I have H and not H. Look at this. I have H and not H. And everything that I have is logical OR. Since I have H or not of H, this is always true. True or anything is true. So this is a tautology. So first part is simple. Let's look at the second part. Okay. So the first part is a tautology. Let's look at the second part. Second one is a slightly trickier one. So if it is not the case that riches are sufficient for Mr. X to be happy, then Mr. X is rich and not happy. This is very tricky. So let's write this down carefully. Okay. So I have if, right? It is not the case. Okay. It is not the case. I have if, right? Which means I have some implication here. Because I have if then. Look at this. I have if then. This if and this then is an implication. Now, within the first part, between my if and then, I have, it is not the case, it is not the case, it is not the case that riches are sufficient. It is not the case that riches are sufficient for Mr. X to be happy. Okay. So again, I'll write it in simple form. Let's say X is rich. Okay. Let me call it as R. Rx. Okay. If you say Rx as X is rich, I'll skip the X part. I'll just write it as R. R basically means R is rich. It is not the case that riches is sufficient. Again, it says sufficient for Mr. X to be happy. So sufficient basically means you'll get a term like this. R implies H because there is a word sufficient here, right? Sufficient basically means not the case that riches. So this is, which means X is rich, X is happy, right? So we have constructed the first part. Then let's look at the second part. Mr. X is rich and not happy. Mr. X is rich and not happy, right? This is what I have. Again, look at how I've broken this down and how I've translated this into a logical statement by just using the simple principles that we learned in the course videos. If, then. So I have if, then, right? This is my if part. This is my if part. This is my then part. It is not the case, not. Riches is sufficient. Whenever there is sufficient, you have the implication. So here, what do we have? Not of Rx implies Hx implies, okay, yeah, this is what we have. Now, is this a tautology? Let's see. So what do I have here? So let's simplify this first, right? Not of, not R or H. Okay, again, I have this implication, which means again, not of this or R and not H. Okay, so this not and not will cancel out. So I'll be left with not or R or H or R and not H. This is what I have, right? Now let's see, right? This is what I have. Now, what is this equivalent to? Is this a tautology? Now let's assume I have only two terms, right? If R is true, then what happens? If R is true, right? This is true, then not R is false. Okay, again, this is actually a tautology. You can actually prove that very easily, right? So if you simplify this, I hope I wrote everything correctly, right? So not of, one second. So let me just check if I've written everything correctly. Not of R or H. Okay, so this part is this. I've placed this not here, right? So this whole thing is here. This not is here, or R and not H. Okay, so this is what I have. Now, now let's see. So if I have not R, okay, so this is what I have. Okay. So is this a tautology? Let's see. This or this, right? Oh, so let's see. If I write this as not of, okay, not of, okay. So let me write this. Let me write this slightly. Again, I can prove that this is true very easily. Okay, so let's see. If I write this, if I apply De Morgan's law on this, what do I get? I get not of R and not H. If I apply De Morgan's law on this, this is what I'll get. Or R and not H. Now, if you look at this, if this is X, what do I have? Not X. Or if this is X, not X or X is always true, right? Not X or X is always true. Hence, this is also a tautology, right? So which of the following implications are tautologies? Both, right? I hope you got this, right? Again, the challenge here is to translate this carefully into this statement. Once you have done that, the simple part is P implies Q is same as not P or Q. That's it. Use this formula, very simple formula that we have seen when we learned basic implication, and you can solve this very easily, right? This is a good question. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is also a very good question. So let's see. So it says PQRS before primitive statements, consider the following arguments. Okay, which of the following are valid? Okay, so let's look at P first. Okay, again, this is time taking, but it is doable. Okay, it's slightly time taking, that's all. So, okay, so which of them are valid? Valid basically means tautology. Okay, is this a tautology? Let's see, what do I have? I have not P or Q, right? I have not P or Q, which I can write not P or Q as P implies Q, right? I can write this part as P implies Q. P implies Q and R implies S. P implies Q and not R implies S. Okay, so let's see. Because this side, what I have is not S implies Q. So I'm trying to get this. So if I have P or Q, what does P or Q? Can I write P or Q as not P? Can I write this as not P? So not of not P or R. Can I write it this way? Obviously, right? So this is equivalent to not P implies R. Not P implies R. Okay, this is what I have. Now, what do I want to prove? I want to prove not S. So does this imply this? So I'm given these three. I'm given these three. This is just like your inference, right? You're given P implies Q, R implies S, not P implies R. And you have to prove if this is true, if this is a tautology. Again, we don't know whether it is or not. Not P implies Q. Can I, so not, sorry, not S implies Q. Can I do that? How can I write this? Can I rewrite this as, I have P implies Q. Can I rewrite this as not S implies not R? I can write it this way, right? See, I'm trying to get the not S form here, right? I can write this as not S implies not R. Okay, how can I rewrite this? Can I rewrite this as not R? Okay, I can, yes, I can rewrite this as not R implies not of not P, which is P. Okay, look at this. From these three, can I, because these three are true, right? Look at this. Not S implies not R implies P implies Q, which means not S implies Q, which is what we have in the RHS. So this is a tautology. P is true. Okay, so A can't be the answer, B can't be the answer, C and D, one of them has to be the answer. Okay, what is the difference? Q is the difference, Q and R. Let's see if, see, you can just check again, just like this way, just like this strategy. Can you prove that Q is true or false? If Q is true, D is your answer. If Q is false, C is your answer. You don't have to check the others. Let's see what is Q. What does Q say? Okay. Okay, so either this is the answer or this is the answer, right? So let's think about Q. Q says P, okay, not P and Q. Okay, and what is the second one that I have? I have Q implies not P or R. This is what I have, the second part. So this is the first one and this one. Do they both imply not R? Okay, let's see. Again, I don't use this symbol for not. I tend to use this symbol for not, typically. Just my habit. Okay. So now let's see. This is true. For this to be true, this has to be true. And this also has to be true. Okay. Which means if this is true, look at this. If this is true, this has to be true. Right? Again, simple logic. We've seen this in the course videos, right? For this to be true, you're told that not P is true. So for this to be true, you're told, okay, not P is true, right? So not P is true, which means this is already true. Okay. See, look at this. Not P is already true. Okay. So what do we have? Not P or R, right? Yes. Then I can, then see, look at this. Not P is true. So for, see, look at this. Not P or R is true. Okay. Not P is true. Then R can either be true or false. Whether R is true or false doesn't matter, right? Because then this, for this whole statement to be true, because not P is already true, it doesn't matter whether R is true or false, which means I can't conclude that R is false, or in other words, not R is true. I can't conclude this. I can't make this conclusion, which means Q is not a valid statement, or Q is not a tautology, right? So D cannot be the answer. C is the answer. Very simple. Again, while this is a 2-mark question, this is very simple if you carefully solve these problems. Look at this. Because I have these ands, why am I able to solve it using rules of inference? Because I have these ands and I have these implications. Because of this structure, I'm able to use the rules of inference and quickly solve this problem, right? I hope that is clear. Okay. So let's go to the 11th question now. Okay. So the 11th question says, okay, this was a trick one for me. Okay. In a room, there are two types of people, namely type 1 and type 2. Type 1 people always tell the truth and type 2 people always lie. You're given a fair coin to a person in the room without knowledge which type he is from and tell him to toss it and hide the result till you ask for it. Upon asking, the person replies, the result of the toss is head. The result of the toss is head if and only if I am telling the truth. Okay, this was tricky. This was a This was a mind bender when I started thinking about it, right? Which of the following is correct? Okay, let's see. Let's assume I gave it to a person of type 1, right? Type 1 person always tells the truth. So I am telling the truth. Hence, the result of the toss is head, right? So the option here is, if I gave it to a type 1 person, the result is head, which means D can't be the answer, right? B can't be the answer. There are only two possibilities, A or C. Now I'm just getting rid of options here. Now the tricky part is, if I give the coin to the type 2 person, what happens? This was a tricky part for me, right? So one way to write this statement, okay? So let's see, this statement I can write it as X is true if and only if Y is true. Okay, this is a simpler way to write this statement. See, this statement, X is true, the result of the toss is head, if and only if Y is true. Okay, I can write this statement as this, right? What is the negation of this statement? Again, you can follow logic and write it down carefully. The negation of this statement is, again, what is this? X is true, by implication, Y is true. The negation of this is either X is true. Okay, the negation of this is the negation of this is either X is true and Y is false, or X is false and Y is true, right? Look at this. So I've translated this into a simpler sentence. Again, this actually, you can also, without going through this path also, you can answer this question. Okay, you can say, okay, but I want to take you through step by step. Okay, there are multiple ways of answering this statement. For example, imagine I gave it to type 2 person. Type 2 person never tells the truth, right? Type 2 person never tells the truth. He never tells the truth, right? Hence, the toss has to be head. So actually A is the right option here, right? But I'm trying to arrive at that step by step. Okay, so okay, I can write this statement as X is true if and only if Y is true. The negation of that is either X is true and Y is false, or X is false and Y is true. Okay, so this is equivalent to, so this type of writing is equivalent to, let me write it down, either toss is head. Okay, either the toss is heads, right? And I'm not telling the truth, or the toss is tail, and I'm telling the truth. Okay, I'm telling the truth. So again, look at this, either this or this. What does X is true basically mean? X is true basically means the toss is head. That's why I read either toss is heads and Y is false. What does Y is false means? I'm not telling the truth. So I'm not telling the truth. Second part, or X is false, which means the toss is tails, right? The toss is tail, and look at this, and so the toss is tail and Y is true. What is Y is true? I'm telling the truth. Now you might say, why am I taking the negation of this? I'm taking the negation of this because if I gave this to type 2 person, type 2 person always lies. Type 2 person always lies, which means the statement that he made is also a lie. Okay, the statement he made is also a lie, which means the negation of this is correct. This statement, if it is false, if it's a lie, then the negation of it will be true. And if this is a statement, then this is the negation. And this negation, I can translate it into this. Now look at the fun part. Here, again, this is a step-by-step way of solving this problem. It's tedious, but it's fun if you're careful with it. Okay, so now look at this. Either this is true, or this is true. Now, I know that I'm not telling the truth because I'm type 2 person. For type 1 person, we know it's heads, straightforward. For type 2 person, I know that I'm not telling the truth. So this can't be the option because there is an and here, right? This is false. So I'm not telling the truth. So this part is true. This part is true. Since this whole thing is true and this whole part is false, look at this. This whole expression is true. This part is false, which means this part has to be true. For that, this has to be true and this has to be true, which means the toss is heads, right? Which means even if I give it to type 2 person, I get heads. So the option A is the right option here. This is the step-by-step way of translating this statement into something like this, taking the negation of it. Why are we taking the negation of it? Because if type 2 person actually uttered this statement will be correct because he always lies. So I take the negation of this statement. Okay. So to take the negation of the statement is non-trivial, and hence I've actually used this type of format to write the negation of that statement carefully. Once I write the negation of the statement, I can derive what the result would be, and the answer is option A. This is a tricky one. This is also, again, it took me time to figure this out. Okay, this is a tricky, and I think, oh wow, this is a 1 mark question. I thought this was a 2 mark question. I don't know. I felt this was hard, to be honest, from my side, especially for the type 2 person, because I had to, because I worked out using these steps. I know some of you are logically very strong. You can arrive at the fact that type 2 also lies, and hence this so and so, and you can arrive at heads. But I had to go step by step. Okay. So this was a tricky one for me also. Okay. So now let's go to the 12th question. Okay. So we have seen a very similar question in the course videos also. Some boys in the class are taller than all the girls. Okay. We have seen this example in the course videos, right? So this is nothing but option D. Okay. There exists X such that X is a boy, and for all Y, if Y is a girl, then X is taller than Y. We have seen this. I mean, you can go back to the course videos and see the detailed explanation of this. I'm just skipping it in the interest of time, right? Exactly same question we have in the course videos also. Okay, so now let's look at this 13th question. What does it say? The following propositional statement is satisfiable but not valid. And we discussed what satisfiable is, right? Satisfiable basically means in some cases it will be true, in some cases it will be false. Valid basically means a tautology. A contradiction basically means a contradiction, which means every time it is going to be false. Now let's look at this statement. Okay, sorry, this has to be an and. Okay, let's look at this statement. One simple strategy to do is to actually draw the truth table. You have only 3 variables, right? P, Q, R, right? So you have three variables. So then you have the statement. If you can, because there are only 8 options here, right? There are only 8 options here. You can actually draw the truth table and show that this is satisfiable but not valid. That's one of the ways of solving it. The other way of solving it is to simplify this. Okay, we have seen multiple ways of simplification. There are tons of ways of simplifying this. So you can easily prove that this is satisfiable but not valid using truth table. That's certainly one approach. Might take slightly more time, but of course you can also simplify this whole thing and say that this is not always true, or it's again not always false. Again, in this whole approach, all you have to do is, if you have P implies Q, all you have to do is you have to replace it, not P or Q. If you keep doing this, you can trivially solve this. This is not a hard problem, slightly time taking, that's all. So let's go to the 14th question now. Okay. Oh, this was a very good question. I really liked solving this question. This was fun. Okay. 3 boxes are presented to you. One contains gold. The other 2 are empty. Okay. Each box has imprinted on it a clue to its contents. The clues are, on box 1, I have this clue. Okay. Only one message amongst these 3 is true. The other 2 are false. Which box has the gold? Very, very good question. So let's assume my statement BI basically means ith box has gold. Okay, ith box has gold. Okay, so let's assume this is my statement BI. So not of BI basically means ith box is empty or does not have gold. Okay, so what are the 2 clues that we're given? Only one box contains gold, right? The first thing that we are given here is only one box contains gold. How can you write this as a logical statement? You can say B1 contains gold, but B2 does not contain gold, and B3 does not contain gold. This is one possibility. Or see, because in this case, either this is true, or B1 does not contain gold and B2 contains gold and B3 does not contain gold. Or look at this. This says B1 contains gold. This says B2 contains gold. The third option is B3 contains gold, which means B1 and B2 does not contain gold, but B3 contains gold. What is this? This is equivalent to the fact that only one contains gold and the other two are empty. So this statement, I can write it logically as this. Okay, so this is one statement. What is the second statement? Second statement says only one of these messages is correct. Let's write these messages in logic. Okay, so what does this statement mean? The gold is not here, which means the gold is not in B1. Okay, let's assume this statement is correct and the other statements are incorrect. Okay, only one of them is correct, right? Either box 1 can be correct, or box 2 is correct, or box 3. Only one of them is correct, not more than one. So let's assume box 1 is correct. Okay, so what does that mean? The gold is not here, so not of B1 is correct, and second statement is incorrect. What is second statement? That's why I put not. What is second statement? The gold is not here, so not of not B2. This statement is incorrect. This is one possibility. And look at this, there are two nots here, so be careful, right? The third statement is the gold is in box 2, which is also incorrect. So this is the first possibility. This is a possibility wherein this statement is correct. This statement that is glue, that is this clue, or this statement that is written on box 1 is right, or the statement on box 2 is correct. How do I write this? I will write this as not of B1 and not of B2 and not of B2. Yes, this is what I'll write it as. Again, here I'm saying the first statement is correct. Here I'm saying second statement is correct. In the third case, I'll write it as the third statement. The third statement on the third box is correct. Not of B1 and not of B2 and B2. So I'm given these two now. I'm given these two and I have to determine whether B1 is true or B2 is true or B3 is true. I have to determine given these three. Now, if you simplify this, again, this is fairly simple. If you cancel not, you'll get this. You cancel not, you'll get this. Cancel not, cancel not, right? Again, you can easily simplify this. If you simplify this using De Morgan's laws, you will arrive at a statement like this. Okay, B1 and not B2. Okay, or B1 and B2. Okay, if you simplify this carefully, again, I'm not doing it step by step, but you can easily do it. Just apply De Morgan's law carefully, you'll arrive at this. Now, what is this? If you think about what is this, look at this, B1 and not of B2. Okay, let's assume B2 is true. Again, this is true and this is true. Okay, we are told that these two statements are true. If this statement is true, then this has to be true or this has to be true. One of them has to be true. Again, this whole thing I can write it as B1, because I have B1 common here, right? B1 and B2 or not of B2, right? So B1 and B2, yes, I can write it as this. Now look at this. This has to be true and this is always true. B2 or not of B2 is always true. So this is same as B1. Look at this. If I just simplify the second statement, what did I get? I got B1 is true. By just simplifying this, see, if this is true, if my second statement, so let's call this statement 1 and statement 2. By simply simplifying my second statement, I got that B1 is true. Okay, if my second statement is true, my B1 is true. Now, if B1 is true, is this statement also true? Let's see, if B1 is true, this is true. Okay, let's assume B1 is true. Then B2 has to be false and B3 has to be false, because it says only one of them contains gold. Right? For this allocation, is this, again, we need statement 1 and statement 2 both to be true. Statement 2 is equivalent to B1. So let's say B1 equals to true. Right? If B1 equals to true, B2 and B3 has to be false because only one of them contains gold. Now, does this allocation of B1 to true, B2 and B3 to false make this statement true? If this statement does not evaluate to true, then there is a problem. Okay, so this is true, this is true. So this whole thing is true. If this whole thing is true, this is logical OR. I don't care about what these are. I really don't care, because true or anything is true. So this assignment of B1 to true, B2 to false, B3 to false makes both statement 1 and statement 2 true, which means the gold must lie in box 1. Okay, so the answer is only one message is true. Which box has the gold? Enter the box number. 1 is the answer here. Very good question. I really enjoyed solving this. this was a mind teaser, but it was a fun. I really enjoyed solving it, to be honest. Okay. So next question. Okay, the last one. Okay, this was a slightly tedious question, but doable. Okay. Which of the following statements are true? Okay, look at this. It says P implies Q and Q implies P. Okay, sorry, P implies Q and Q implies R. So if you have P implies Q and Q implies R, you can conclude that P implies R. You can conclude this. So this way is all right, but not the other way around. Okay, forward direction is okay, backward direction is not okay. We have seen this in the course videos also, right? So this is not true. A is not true. What about B? Let's see if B is true. Okay, so let me, so A is certainly not true. Again, B is very complicated. So let's go to C and D. Let's see if they are true, because B is very complicated looking. So B says for all, there exists Y for all X, Pxy. Oh, this is by implication. No, you can't do that. You can't do by implication. You can only go in one direction, right? You can't see, we have seen this, right? We have seen this in the course videos, right? You can't pull both. You can't pull both out. That's not valid. Right? This is not true. Okay, because you have double implies, which is equivalent to. No, this is not equivalent to this, right? This is not equivalent to this, so this is not an option. You can only go in one direction. The third option, what does it say? For all x comma y, p of x comma y. Okay, this is also a problem, because look at this here. For all x comma y, which means this is same as for all x and for all y, p of x comma y is true. Okay, on the RHS, look at this first statement. In this first statement, for all x, this statement is true, but I'm not saying anything about y here, which means y is like a free variable without any quantification, right? Without any there exists or for all type of quantifier for it. So y is a free variable here. Here I have for all y, which means for all this y, but x is a free variable here. On the LHS, both x and y have for all x, for all y, right? There is a quantification both on x and y here, but on the RHS, this part, this is not quantified, and here x is not quantified. Hence, this is not an option. By ruling out these three options, B seems to be, again, I can prove that B is true by going step by step, but it's just very lengthy. To solve this problem more optimally, we are just weeding out, or we are just eliminating those options which cannot be true, thereby leaving us with the option that is true, right? So I hope you understood most of these questions here. Again, to be honest with you, logic is tricky. Okay, so let me just change the screen here a little. Okay, so to be honest with you, just give me a sec. Let me. Okay, so logic is tricky, but it's not hard. Okay, it's tricky, certainly. We have to be careful about it and realize that logic is tricky. Okay, again, if you have seen the course videos also, there are these tricky cases, but it's not hard. It's very, very scoring. I've seen a lot of people say that logic is hard, I make mistakes, all of that stuff. But if you follow the rules, again, even for non-native English speakers, okay, that's why we have taken a lot of time in the course videos. We have spent tons of time translating English sentences to logic sentences and logic sentences to English. We have done tons of examples, primarily because of this, because those are the types of questions that I've seen a lot of students get incorrect, because most of us don't have English as a mother tongue, right? And it's a very common mistake that all of us commit. But if you're careful with it, the way we have seen in the course video, in the practice problems today, if you're careful with it, you can actually crack these problems very easily. I'm not saying every problem is trivial. There are some bouncers. To be honest with you, I've got stuck with some of the some of the examples that I've given in the course videos. I actually took lots of care to come up with those statements in some cases, right? Because those are tricky. Okay, I think there is one example about prime numbers, and there is one example about exactly having two apples on the table. It's there in one of the course videos. Those are very tricky cases that you have to be very, very careful when you translate English sentences to predicate logic or predicate logic back to English. Both sides, right? But it's not a hard subject. That's what I want to convey. If you follow the rules, if you follow the steps that we've discussed in the course videos, and if you go step by step, it's a very, very scoring subject because it's easy. That's the fun of it, right? So starting tomorrow, let's get going. We'll start counting and all the combinatorics and probability. again, I'm looking forward for probability, one of my favorite subjects. And again, unfortunately, the GATE syllabus for probability and statistics is very small. I hope I wish they had more content for probability and statistics, because as computer science engineers, we end up using tons of probability and statistics, right? Especially if you're designing approximate algorithms, or if you're designing probabilistic algorithms or randomized algorithms, we use a ton of probability in algorithms. We use a ton of probability in machine learning, and we use a ton of statistics nowadays. As more and more data is getting collected, there is more and more probability and statistics that computer science engineers have to learn and be aware of. There are also probabilistic data structures, lots of interesting stuff. But whatever, I mean, we'll have to stick with the syllabus that the GATE Council has given. So we hope, again, let's run through it. We'll be thorough, but we'll go fast this time, so that we finish counting, probability. We don't have statistics. We only have basics of probability and graph theory. Once we finish that, we are done with discrete mathematics. Anyway, we are done with engineering mathematics. We'll go to other subjects, other very important subjects, especially the hardware or system subjects like computer organization, digital logic circuits, operating systems, databases. I'm looking forward for some of the subjects, computer networks, and some interesting subjects like theory of computation, right? So let's go through them. Sounds good, folks. Thanks a lot. Once again, thanks to everyone who has participated in the scholarship test. Looking forward to more exciting times with all of our students. And congratulations to both our students and outsiders. We've got good ranks. And those who couldn't make it, that's perfectly okay. I'm hoping that you will know where you're lacking enough and improve on those, so that at the end of the scholarship test is not the end and all. Your GATE exam is the more important target for you. Now you know what you're lacking. Let's focus back on that and get going. See you again. See you, folks. Thank you very much for joining in. Bye-bye.